Welcome, everybody. Hope everybody's weekends are looking good. Last weekend before Thanksgiving, as a reminder, we're going to be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week, and we will be off Thursday and Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday. Few stories I want to go over with you today. You might remember that the day after, maybe it was 2 days after the elections in early November, we learned that the 17-year-old son of the Republican Virginia Governor-elect Glenn Youngkin tried to vote two times. Two times he tried to vote despite being only 17 years old. Well, finally, Glenn Youngkin has been asked about this, and Glenn Youngkin's reaction is to be upset that the media is focused on what his son did, saying it's really no big deal. And it's sort of unclear if 17-year-olds can vote. No, it's not. So this is Glenn Youngkin's reaction. He doesn't like the fact that people care about the fact that his son tried to vote illegally.
Reports of your son trying to vote for this election. Can you explain what happened there?
Yeah, it was silliness. I think there's real confusion on where a 17-year-old can vote or not, and so he had a friend who suggested that he might be able to vote. He went up and asked. I know my son really was incredibly respectful young man.
Yeah.
And he presented his ID, and when they said he couldn't vote, he said okay, and he went to school. So I am a little bit frustrated that it's become, the media paid so much attention to it. It's my 17-year-old son, and I really would like everybody to leave my family alone.
Yeah. So let's see if we can break that down. First of all, he tried it twice. Not once. So it's not just, he just said, hey, would you let me vote? And well, let me try another place and see if they'll let me vote. There is no confusion about whether 17-year-olds can vote. If you have to be 18 in order to vote. Now, there's one caveat. It's not even a caveat many people know about, which is if you will be 18 at the time of a general election, I think it's in many states, maybe it's a federal rule, you can vote at 17 in the primary. So imagine I'm 17-year-old David Pakman at the time of the primary, but at the time of the general, I will be 18. I'd be allowed to vote in a primary. Even if he was confused, they clarified it for him the first time he tried to vote. So then the second time was what? What are we supposed to believe about the second time? And of course, guys, if Glenn Youngkin's son could legally vote, obviously he would know that, and his dad would be saying, all of us are voting for me, obviously. Maybe they would have even done it together for the photo op opportunity. Like the idea that it wasn't discussed in the family, or it wouldn't have been if he was old enough to vote. I'm counting on your vote, son. Are there 17-year-olds in this country that don't know that? I knew from age 7 that you have to be 18 to vote in the United States. If you surveyed 17-year-olds in high schools nationwide, what percentage do you think knows that you have to be 18 to vote? It's a very high number. We have an ignorant country in many ways, but just about every high schooler knows you got to be 18 to vote. And just imagine for a second what right-wing media would be doing if it was Terry McAuliffe's 17-year-old son or daughter who had tried twice to vote in an election that their dad was running. And it's absolutely outrageous. Speaking of outrageous, folks, this cannot be right. This can't possibly be. It is. A Trump advisor, lawyer who was involved in the effort to try to change the election results by pressuring Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, she has now been appointed to a federal election panel. It is what it is. Trump advisor appointed to panel on U.S. elections, writes the Associated Press. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights has appointed to a federal election advisory board a prominent Republican attorney who assisted Trump in his failed effort to overturn the 2020 election results. Cleta Mitchell. Is Cleta the female version of Cletus? I've never heard that name before. Cleta Mitchell was named to the Board of Advisors for the Federal Election Assistance Commission. The advisory board does not have the ability to directly make policy, but can recommend voluntary guidelines. The EAC certifies voting systems and advises local election offices on compliance with federal election regulations. Mitchell was nominated by the Republican-appointed members on the commission and approved by a majority vote. Mitchell is a prominent Republican lawyer who joined Trump on a January 2nd phone call with Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. On the call, Trump implored Raffensperger to find him enough votes for him to be declared the winner. Remember that, guys?
I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
Exactly. Which was won by Biden. Mitchell claimed she found possible examples of fraud in the state, but the Secretary of State's office told her her data was incorrect. She says, I'm honored to have been selected with bipartisan support. That's true. At least one Democrat did vote for her to be given this position. Guys, it's listen, should this be illegal? No. Is she necessarily going to do something wrong in this position? No, I guess not. But the optics of this are absurd. She was on the phone with Brad Raffensperger saying, we found fraud. You got to review the results. And now she's going to be on a panel that advises election offices on voting systems and preventing fraud. It's, I don't even know that I can call it a grift. Is it just the incestuous nature of American politics? Is it a grift? Is it something else? I don't know. But it's very, very depressing. Alex Jones is now begging for money from his audience for the lawsuit that he lost. On the Wednesday bonus show, I told you that in a case where the plaintiffs are Sandy Hook parents of victims from the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012, the plaintiffs are suing Alex Jones for defamation. The court has found against Jones, but not on the merits yet, on the basis that Jones is obstructing discovery. That's the finding so far. So he's trying to prevent this from even getting to the next level where he may actually be found liable for damages for defamation itself. Alex Jones is now saying he needs money. He needs $2 million in order to pay for all of this. Take a look at what he had to say.
Trials, even though I've already been found guilty by default, now they're going to try to tell the jury how guilty I am.
Now, even that's deceptive. I've been found guilty by default. You obstructed discovery. You're supposed to allow discovery, and you didn't. It's not guilty by default. It's you're not allowing discovery.
It's going to take a lot of money to fight this and a lot of money for the appeals. And so I can't spend the money we have paying our crew and running our independent media outlet that reaches millions of people without your support. InfoWars is doing its most important work ever right now. So
I would argue that that's not true.
This is a no-brainer. Please go to SaveInfoWars.com. Make a $10 donation, a $1,000 donation. Wealthy people out there, your free speech is being destroyed. InfoWars is just the first.
Most wealthy people, but certainly most wealthy people know their free speech is not being destroyed. Their free speech is fine.
To fall. And if wealthy folks don't start spending their money promoting liberty, promoting freedom, we're going to lose this country and we're going to lose the world to tyranny. So please go to SaveInfoWars.com. It's Give, Send, Go. They're great folks. They're patriots. We're banned everywhere else, even be able to raise money. And this will help keep us in the fight for the next few years. So I've never issued an alert this serious. I need your help right now.
That's also not true. There's always some alert.
Stand up for yourself. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for free speech. Stand up for America, and don't let these bullies intimidate anybody. Please donate right now at Save Him.
Okay. Now, that is what desperation looks like. But I hate to tell you guys, he's raising a bunch of money. This campaign started a day and a half ago. The goal is $2 million. He's already raised just a few dollars short of $100,000. By the time that this clip gets published and today's podcast gets published, it may be a lot more money. So this is what desperation looks and sounds like. I guess the risk is we may lose InfoWars altogether if we don't donate to Alex Jones, which doesn't seem like it would really be that bad of a thing, quite frankly. It seems like actually that might be something that has positive influence. So Alex Jones, as I told you, not yet actually found liable on the merits of the defamation case, but they are declining to actually do what they're supposed to do when it comes to discovery to even allow this to go forward, despite a judge's requests / demands, depending on what you want to call them. And now Alex Jones is turning it into the grift of grifts. He made money by by lying about Sandy Hook. He then got sued. And now he's trying to make money by painting himself as the victim as a result of not participating in what the court said he has to do, discovery, for this case. I don't think anybody in my audience is going to donate, but people are donating. He's already up to almost $100,000 and probably more by the time we publish this clip. It's an amazing time that we live in. I want to remind everybody again, we will be off next week, Thursday and Friday for the Thanksgiving holiday, just so people don't email me and say, David, where's the show? Where's the show? We're going to be off Thursday and Friday. We will be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We're going to take a quick break. I want to hear from some of you. I have questions to answer. I have emails to address and show you. You can also, of course, find me on Twitter at @dpacman. Look forward to hearing from you. Please make sure that you are signed up at joinpacman.com. Grab a David Pakman Show membership. Our program primarily depends on people signing up for those memberships. And we do an extra show every day called the Bonus Show for our members. We also have commercial-free audio and video streams of the show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. Great way to support independent media. Let's talk to people in the audience. We do this via Discord. davidpakman.com/Discord. And let's see who wants to chat today. Let's start today with Aaron from Los Angeles, California. Aaron, you are on the air.
Hey, David. I just wanted to ask you real quick, because I know that you've spoken on this a bit, but what's your opinion on, let's say, a revolving door or like an open door border policy? Because I've been reading a lot, and I'm like actually, although I'm not a really big fan of Reagan, one of the few things I did enjoy, I did like about his policies were his immigration policies, such as like the Bracero program and different programs such as like granting amnesty to the undocumented immigrants. I was just wondering, what's your take on immigration?
Well, when you say revolving door or open door, do you mean just anybody can come in and out, work, no screening whatsoever? What do you mean specifically?
Yeah, well, like, or, you know, at least alleviating it for seasonal workers to be able to come in during the agricultural seasons when it's busy, and then allowing them to return at any time, usually during the off season, to go back home.
Yeah, a lot of those things I'm very much in favor of. I do think there need to be some immigration controls. I am not for an open border. I am not for this sort of fully libertarian idea of total free movement of labor and people. I just, practically speaking, I don't think that would work, but we've got to give permanent status to DACA recipients, number one. Guest worker program, absolutely. People often, when they say shut this down, shut that down, they don't understand not only the degree to which industries are dependent on workers from other countries, sometimes undocumented, but also why some of the things that they have are far cheaper as a result of that labor. And it's very hypocritical when you hear people who want the cheap stuff. If stuff gets more expensive, they would attack whoever the president is, but they also want that very same president to, quote, keep people out. Incoherent, doesn't make sense. And I'm for a whole bunch of the things you're proposing, not open borders, but for a lot of the things you're talking about. Yes.
Okay. In terms of border security, though, how would that work? Because from my understanding, our current state of border security is not only notoriously corrupt, but it's also just like not working. I mean, people are still able to, like, it's mostly there to be able to prevent, I guess, like drug traffickers from coming in, but they're still managing to like come in at a rate that benefits their type of business and industry. So I was just wondering, like, in terms of border security, how should we reframe that so it's not just like a black hole that we're just spending a lot of the taxpayer money on?
Well, two things. We are disproportionately focused on people just physically crossing the border rather than people flying in and just staying here or coming in with a visa and staying. So one of the first things you have to think about is you can disincentivize people from doing the illegal crossings by making it less necessary to do that. And so a lot of the programs you're talking about, guest worker programs, et cetera, they remove a lot of the need to come in the way that you're talking about. So we just need to be thinking about it. You're completely right that if you just change one thing, it doesn't change the entire dynamic. We need to be thinking much bigger.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate the call. Thank you so much. There's Aaron from Los Angeles. Let's go next to, why don't we try Mitch from Toronto, Canada. Mitch, you are on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, yeah.
Okay, great. Long-time listener. I actually just became a member the other day. Great. Love your program.
Thank you. I
love
appreciate
what you
that.
do. For sure. So I don't know if you follow anything going on in Canada, but what I wanted to ask you about was more, I guess, cross-border anyway, and it has to do with the environment and kind of like where things are going in the future in terms of gas prices are getting crazy up here in Canada, at least in Ontario, they're getting crazy. And I think they're getting pretty expensive in the US as well. What are your thoughts on like moving people to electric cars, subsidizing that? And if you have any thoughts on like how that's playing in with home ownership, condo or otherwise, I would love to hear your thoughts on that kind of scenario.
I'll get back to the second part. Yes. I mean, listen, gas prices are going up. They are not at historic highs, but they are higher. I am a huge advocate of electric cars. I've had one now for over a year. I think that there's an incredible double standard where you have the very same people complaining about high gas prices and blaming them on Biden want to prevent Biden from doing more on building an electric vehicle charging network and subsidizing electric vehicles, incentivizing electric vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. We have some subsidies at the state and some at the federal level for electric cars. It's not nearly enough. So if you want to solve the gas price problem, let's get off of gas. That's number one. Number two, in terms of the home ownership and condo thing, I listened to a very interesting podcast recently, which basically says the path forward is we need government to subsidize retrofitting. You go building by building, structure by structure, and you put solar panels on the roof or in the yard, depending on whether it's urban, rural. You replace and retrofit heating systems to be modern, ultra efficient. Often they are heat pump mini split systems, although there are many other ways that there's not just one system, but we got to get off of burning oil for heating. Certainly baseboard electric is like one of the least efficient. It's a disaster. You replace stoves with ultra efficient new electric. And I love gas as much as the next person. But in this way, you create each building takes in solar power, has the most efficient electric elements for cooking and heating, and you've got a car charger. So you're charging the car with the sun. This is the process. You've just got to start doing it. And you got to start going building by building. Government's got to figure out how to do it. We got to get off this gasoline stuff. We just have to.
Yeah. What is that podcast? I'm curious where you're getting some of your information. I
wish I remembered what it was. I just don't.
No problem.
Let me see if you give me 1 second. Let me see if it's still in my Spotify history. I'm just looking at it on my phone.
While you're looking, I'm also curious what kind of electric car you've been driving.
I've been driving a Tesla.
Okay, you've been driving a Tesla. Now, are you driving the like the van sedan? I think that's the Model X, or are you on the Model S?
Well, I don't want to say specifically because the vehicle is kind of conspicuous,
Sure. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't, it might have been brain stuff, but I don't know.
That's fair.
I don't know what the podcast was, but in any case.
How is it in the winter? How do you find it in the winter?
Well, the thing with electric vehicles is when you use the battery to run the heat pump to heat the car, it does consume significantly more battery. So the range is notably decreased in the winter. It's never been a problem, particularly with the supercharging network and a high-speed charger at home. It's never caused a problem for me, but there's trips where in the summer I might finish the trip at 40%, where I'm rolling in at 22% in winter if I'm running the heat at 70 or something like that.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call. I really appreciate it. And I would love to hear more of your thoughts on this kind of stuff on your program at any point if you decide to cover it. I'm really interested in some of the more granular stuff around this and would love to hear more of your thoughts.
All right. I very much appreciate the call.
Thanks so much, David.
All right. Take care. Guys, pretty solid calls today so far. Let's not ruin it. Please, nobody ruin it. Why don't we go next to Brett from, I believe it's Indiana. Is that right, Brett?
Correct. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
All right, perfect. Hold on a second. I got to go somewhere discreet. Sorry.
Discretion is key with many of these calls.
Right. I'm at school, so I don't want to offend anybody. But anyway, so 2 questions and I'll be quick. So
please.
So for me as a National Guard member, do you think it would be cheaper if the USA spent more on the National Guard as compared to active duty. I don't know if you're informed on that or not. I just was curious as to your thoughts on that.
I don't know enough about that to comment substantively, to be honest.
Or I understand. I mean, it's just if we spent more domestically, it certainly mathematically could save more because, we wouldn't have to spend money sending them to another country, and we could focus on domestic issues, because there are like military jobs where like they do something as simple as work on railroad tracks or, washers and dryers, there's even combat medics, but that's just my view.
It's an interesting question. I will look into it.
I appreciate it. So here's my last question. Do you know if there's, with the infrastructure bill that Biden just signed?
Yep.
There's a possibility of magnetic trains being included into it, or because I tried to look into that and I didn't see anything about it.
So I know that there's a designation of money specifically for rail, and there's also a designation for public transit, and both of those things can touch train travel. I don't know. Let me put it this way. I haven't seen anything about maglev trains specifically, but that doesn't mean it is in there or it isn't in there. I just haven't seen it at that level of granularity.
Right, because when I was in Paris, I went from Paris to Madrid on a magnetic train. I was very impressed by the speed. I was like, wow, holy crap.
I like you. Did you say Madrid?
Yeah, Madrid is Paris.
Are you talking about Madrid, Spain?
Yeah.
I like that. I've never heard it pronounced Madrid, but I sort of like it.
Well, it depends on what language I'm speaking. So if I'm speaking Spanish, I'll say it like Madrid. But if I'm speaking it to like, an English speaker, I'll say it as Madrid.
Hey, listen,
Sorry.
If it's no, I love it. If it's working for you, keep going. I like it.
All righty. Well, I appreciate your time.
All right.
Have
Thanks,
a great day.
Brett. There's Brett from Indianapolis dropping in a variety of different opinions, questions, comments, etc. I believe last week we tried to talk to Isaiah from Arkadelphia and we had a technical problem. Let's try Isaiah. We didn't get on last week, did we, Isaiah?
Hi, David. Can you understand me now?
I can.
So there's no loud background noise of some variety?
I'm hearing no power tools. I'm hearing no deli slicers or weights being dropped. It's very clear today.
I don't own a deli slicer. I think it'd be cool if I did. I think I'd be moving up in the world to have that. I was just curious. I've noticed that a lot on the left, because of a lot of people on the left don't like to acknowledge that China and Russia are really threats. And I'm not going to call out specific names or such, but when looking at, I'm sure you're familiar with what's going on with Belarus, but for your audience, the nation of Belarus, which is basically a puppet of Russia, is essentially engaging in human trafficking and espionage to basically sabotage the border of the European Union. And I feel like if you ever bring up that, hey, these countries may not necessarily align with U.S. foreign policy that we may disagree with at times, that does not mean they are good countries. They are threatening to the liberal democratic world order.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just something that needs to be acknowledged more often.
Yeah, you're very much, it's a very astute point, which is there's a contingent of the left that I basically make every effort not to engage with. I don't find them interesting. These are lefties who in the 1960s and 70s in Argentina, when my parents were growing up, they were all over the place. And it was sort of like the West is bad people. And it doesn't matter if anyone, if you're a part of the West and you say anyone else is doing something that's bad, you're an imperialist, you're whatever. It's a really old script. And when I see these folks now, it just reminds me of the people that my parents described, kind of, my parents very much on the left in Argentina in the 60s and 70s, but they found those supposed leftists really as interfering with social democratic goals, not actually helping. I try not to engage with them because it's just so boring. It's so passé. But you're absolutely right. There are people like, for example, if you look at the comments of my recent clip where I said, hey, you know what? A lot of the China virus xenophobia that we're seeing against Asian Americans, it's disgusting. There's no place for it. But here's some actual stuff that we could look at that China's doing that we should be concerned about. It doesn't align with my values. And a lot of the comments are, but David, the U.S. does bad stuff too. Or you didn't mention this one thing that the U.S. We're not talking about that. We're not talking. We're having a conversation where I'm pointing out, hey, here's things that don't align with my values. I'm not saying go to war. I'm not saying anything else. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's especially disappointing to me because I'm fairly young. I was born after 9/11.
Okay.
And what got me engaged with politics is every single day growing up being reminded, hey, we're at war in Afghanistan, Iraq, and should not be. I know people who served, who are just a few years older than me, served in Iraq. Also know people whose parents served in Iraq.
Yeah.
In Iraq and Afghanistan. So that was never a present thing. So when I voted for Biden, and I live in Arkansas, so my vote doesn't really matter, but I still voted for him. Just him getting out of Afghanistan, even with all the issues afterwards, was enough for me. And then when I saw the left, anytime anyone would say, okay, but the Taliban is still bad, and China moving in and their influence is also bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's like two things can be true at once. The
Yes.
basis of being against a war in Afghanistan or something like that is
right.
You don't want destabilizing and warlords and such.
Sure. Yeah.
Like,
There's a lot
you
of
don't
people
want
where
people-
it's like, it sounds like they say, okay, either China is doing something that's bad or the U.S. is bad. And it's like, hey, hold on a second. The U.S. has a history of doing bad things. And here's some stuff China's doing that it's the black and white thinking is disturbing. And I'm glad you're thinking and talking about this stuff.
I was also curious. Did you vote in the recent Argentine elections?
I did not know. I moved to the U.S. when I was 5, so I've never been registered to vote in Argentina, and my documents aren't even current. So if I wanted to vote in Argentina, first I would have to renew my documents to be up to date, update where I'm living, register as someone who's living in another state and wants to vote. I've not done it. I've never voted in Argentina.
Yeah, I saw the Peronist party suffered a setback, but to be completely honest, just don't know enough about Argentine politics to know if any of the newer parties are actually that much different in any way.
Well, you just from the last 30 seconds, you know more than 99.9% of Americans. So consider that a success.
I just know that South American politics like to be populist and say power to the people, and then it's one family controls the party and pockets all the money.
Yes, that's very often the way it goes. No, but hold on a second. You're not criticizing America when you say that.
I mean, I'm just oh, no, I was meaning specifically.
I know, I'm kidding around. There are people, the same people you were talking about earlier, they would hear you say that and they would go, but the U.S. has families too.
I think they would say like, well, we have the Bushes. No, like the Bush family, I will say, Arkansas is getting kind of a dynastic thing. I don't know if you kept up with this. Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Yeah.
Who is the only candidate now. She's going to be governor. All the others dropped out and endorsed her.
It's crazy.
So
it's crazy.
And her father was, I think, for like 13 years here.
Yeah, Mike Huckabee was a longtime governor. All right, my friend, listen, you've said it all. I'm going to let you go, okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, very good. Guys, let's take a quick break. I'm still taking calls. We're going to take a quick break and then go right back to the phones in a moment. Stay with me. Let's take a few more calls via the David Pakman Show Discord. You can find it at davidpakman.com/Discord. /Discord is the place. Let's go to Harper from Europe. Europe is such a vague location, Harper.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually in France right now.
Sorry all right. That. Love France.
Yeah. I've been here for about a month. Anyway, regarding the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. No, I'm kidding. I just wanted to say, since I've been here for over a month and you were in Spain in August, I wanted to touch on the whole anti-vaccine.
Sure.
Anti-vax scene.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've heard very often about American politics that we're sort of like kind of a crap show, and people look from other countries in on the United States and like, what the heck is going on?
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to say there's sort of an exception to be made. I'm not sure if you agree with the anti-vax situation. Here, while I'm in France, it seems like since I left the United States, I'm from California, things are just as bad over here. And
yes,
it's one
in
of those
fact,
issues.
we've talked about it in France. I don't want to cut you off, but just to remind my audience,
go ahead.
I have mentioned in France, they are having a serious anti-vax issue. Italy as well, by the way. But in France, I think the government did something astute, which is instead of doing a straight, correct me if I'm wrong, instead of doing a straight up vax requirement, they've just said, if you want to go here, there, you need proof of vaccination. You don't have to go and get a vaccine, but if you want to hang out in these cafes or movie theaters or whatever the case may be. And it has made, as I understand it, a lot more people sort of say, well, I really want to do that, so I'm going to go and get a vaccine.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And then there's a small aspect of this that I don't quite see in the United States that I would argue makes it slightly worse over here.
Okay.
And that is that if you split the groups, people who are vaccinated and people who are not, there's more animosity over here between those two groups than there is in the United States.
Really?
It seems a bit more tame where I came from. Yeah. And then I was in Catalonia, and it seemed about the same over there. And I was wondering, since you were in Spain, which has part of Catalonia, about half or maybe 2/3, was Spain like in sort of the realm of countries that have an anti-vax situation? Or was it like not at all?
No,
like France
in
and
fact,
much better than the United States?
at the time that I was in Spain, Spain was only about 45% vaccinated. But when European countries were polled, do you want the vaccine? Spain was off the charts. It was something like 88 or 91% of Spaniards were saying, I plan to get vaccinated, which was one of the highest in all of Europe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, then. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Great call from France there. France. Let's go next. Why don't we try Chris from Colorado? Chris, you're on the air. Chris from Colorado, don't be our first dropped call. We want you to unmute so that I can hear you. Oh, no. Chris from Colorado, last chance, my friend. And that is too bad. I thought maybe we would get through the entire day without a drop, but we didn't do it. Let's go to Mike from Massachusetts. You're on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. Also, obviously, from my title from Massachusetts, happy to have someone from my home state doing what you do. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I guess my question is it's a couple years out before this is a real concern, but for the 2024 election, obviously a lot can happen between now and then. But as things stand right now, there is a real possibility that if Trump were to run, he could win.
Yes.
Correct?
Absolutely.
So I believe there's an argument to be made that Trump's attempt to overturn the election in 2020 really came down to a handful or maybe a half a dozen or so people that blocked him at key steps that would have given him huge opportunities to actually achieve what he was trying to do. Given like the increase of like self-described MAGA candidates that we've seen running for various state positions and and whatnot, and with Trump having the popularity that he has and most likely going to keep that popularity over the next 3 years or so, if Trump were to run and theoretically lose, do you see a possibility where he could actually pull off what he tried in 2020? Or theoretically, if he ran and won, could he then install enough people into key positions that he could actually completely change the system when even after he's gone, Republicans could run the show regardless of what the votes are?
The latter one seems far-fetched. I don't know that 80-plus-year-old Trump as president in an even more kind of dazed and confused state than he was in during his first 4 years is really going to do that. I think that that's kind of far-fetched. I think the first concern you mentioned is a more legitimate one, which is It's looking good for Republicans in the House in 2022 on redistricting alone, never mind actually flipping seats. It's looking okay for Republicans in either 22 or 24, taking control back of the Senate. I don't know that Biden gets reelected. I don't know that if he bails and Kamala's the nominee, that she wins. So by January of 2025, you could again have total Republican control of the White House, House, and Senate. And that's really, really scary. And even if they only have control of some of those, could they somehow use whatever resources they have to give a win to Trump, even if he didn't earn it in the way they fell short of in 2020? I don't want to be hyperbolic, but I also don't want to write it off. I think there are real concerns about if Trump loyalists control more governorships, the House and Senate in 24, and if Trump narrowly loses in 2024, that there is a lot that motivated Trumpist elected officials could try in order to put Trump in the White House, even though he didn't win. Do I think they would succeed? I still think they probably wouldn't, but the fact that we're even talking about it in these terms is very scary.
That's fair. To my latter point, I guess I'd ask, it's not so much to Trump's benefit, but if he were to win in 2024,
yeah,
and let's say, like you said, Republicans control the House, control the Senate, could they, now that they've seen how close they can get to actually overturning an election, could they spend that term, the 2024 to 2028, setting things up so they can essentially run the show going down the road, even when Trump goes away?
They could try. Yes, I think that's a much more plausible way, which is it's not about Trump per se. It's really about others laying further groundwork. And listen,
that was more of my question at first.
It's not even a conspiracy theory in the sense that they've been doing it with voter ID for 15 years. This is what they do. They do it with redistricting. So of course they would continue to try and find new ways.
Okay, that was more my question the first time around. I guess I didn't articulate that quite right, but
no problem.
I appreciate that.
My pleasure. I appreciate the call.
All right. Have a good one. I'm sure I'll be calling back again soon.
All right. There's Mike from Massachusetts. Let's go next to Jamie from Canada. Jamie from Canada, you're on the air.
Hey, David. How's it going?
It's going well. Thank you.
I was just wondering, how do you think that Biden's agenda is going? Because we've had basically the Endless Frontier Act, which passed the Senate, surprisingly hasn't passed the House yet. Then he has the American Rescue Plan, which he signed into law, and then he just signed the bipartisan infrastructure into law. But so that's like he's hitting 3 so far, but technically, but he also has the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and then the For the People Act, or the Right to Vote Act, or whatever they're calling it now. I was just wondering, so he has about maybe 6 or 7 pieces of legislation on his agenda. What realistically, what do you think we're going to see being passed?
Oh, this is such a tough question because candidates make way more promises than they can ever keep or make a reality. At the same time, you also had Biden dealing with COVID and the Delta wave, and I've expressed disappointment that more hadn't been done. My expectation is that maybe not by the end of this year, but by the end of the first quarter of next year, there will be some additional major accomplishment by Joe Biden. I don't know if it'll be the Build Back Better spending bill or if it will be something else, including items you mentioned. But I think that the way I would say it is Biden's doing okay on getting some things done, although it's starting to feel a little bit light. We had the COVID stimulus, vaccination rollout. Now we have a much smaller infrastructure bill than initially proposed signed. I think in order to get back to like a B, he needs one more big piece of legislation by the end of March of next year. That's kind of my mindset right now.
And he said, I think he said this, but he said, I'm going to use every trick in my book to try to get this voting rights passed. He said, I'm putting Kamala in charge. And I was just wondering what you thought of that.
Yeah, I am unsure as to whether the vice president can get it done. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. I hope that she can. I'm unsure. And so far, she does not have major accomplishments under her belt, but that's, it's just, I'm not saying it as a criticism. It's just, she just doesn't right now. And she's not particularly popular right now. I hope that she can do it. I don't know if she can.
That's fine. One last thing before I go is that my realistic expectations, my overperforming hope expectations for the Senate in 2022 is 54, 56 Democrats, but I know realistically we might get only 52 or maybe just hold the 50.
Let's just hope Republicans don't take over. I'm setting my sights much lower than you.
Yeah. Because people are telling me you got to lower your expectations. You got to think it's just going to be 50 or 51 Dems.
I think cautious optimism is the way to go. I appreciate the call.
And yes, thank you. Hope you have a nice day. And Canada's really nice.
It's
is a little bit chilly.
I love Canada. Nice. We love Canada here. Thank you, Jamie from Canada. Very much appreciate the call. Why don't we check in here with Brian from Phoenix? Brian, you're on the air.
Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I was listening to one of your recent episodes regarding the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting. You were talking about how it's representative of all of the problems with gun culture and the fact that Kyle Rittenhouse felt justified in going there at all is sort of indicative of all of those issues.
Yes, parenting, gun culture, vigilantism, etc.
Would you, I agree with a lot of that. Would you also say that there's a similar issue with the way that many of the protesters felt justified in being there around like the particulars around the Jacob Blake shooting in terms of, is there any onus on the media that portrayed the shooting in the way that it did, given, what we know about it now, what was occurring before the police got there, the kids in the car, the knife in the seat, all of those things?
There's kind of two questions there, and I think it's important to be really careful. The protesters, to the extent that people were protesting, I'm not talking about looting, arson, or anything like that. That stuff's against the law, and I'm against it. But the protesting and marching and holding signs and saying things, constitutionally protected, paramount element of the United States of America, right? That is beyond reproach as long as you're doing it in a nonviolent way. The second part is, were they ginned up into a frothy state because of media coverage, which could have been different? That is totally plausible. I don't remember the coverage now, and I would need to study it more. It's completely plausible that media could bear a responsibility for raising tensions. I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying it's theoretically possible, but that's a different issue from I don't think we could say that there's a problem with a culture where people feel like it's okay to go and protest. It is okay to go and protest, and we want to be really clear about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for the call. That's going to do it for calls today. I do plan and hope to take more calls again soon, and I will speak to you then. All right, let's get into this week's email bag. As many of you know, the email bag ranges from the extremely lowbrow, ignorant, and hateful to really interesting ideas, suggestions, questions, all sorts of different things. info@davidpakman.com is the place to send your emails. Remember, we get 500 emails a day, and we go over about 8 a week. So I just want everybody to, I get emails, and then I get emails about, why haven't you read my email yet? And sometimes I get the second one within hours of the first one. It's like, hey, guys, I do sleep sometimes, Okay, let's get to the emails. First one is from a guy who's been writing in for a while. His name's Gary B. And he said, did you get your booster yet, dumbass? And in fact, I did. I mentioned last week that I was going. This is an anti-vax nut who's been emailing for a long time. I think he writes in sometimes about motor oil in vaccines, if I recall correctly. I got my booster on Thursday. Got it at 4:30, went to bed around 11, had a little bit of arm pain, and then the next morning woke up at 7:30, a little bit feverish, although I didn't have a fever, headache like behind the eyes, and just achy. Took a Tylenol with breakfast, and that helped a lot. Worked a regular day, slept a lot Friday night, and then was basically better on Saturday. So I am now triple vaxxed and I'm feeling boosted and all of these different things. But yes, Gary, thank you for asking. I did indeed get my booster. Some call it a third dose. They're probably coming for everybody, is what it seems to be, given again, we've got another rise in cases, and especially what we know about the decreased efficacy, particularly of the J&J vaccine, but in general. By the way, I got 2 Moderna shots as my initial regimen, and then I got a Moderna booster as well. Okay, second email from Jake. Jake says, John Bolton predicted Trump won't run for president again in 2024 because he fears being known as a loser if it doesn't work out. This is what Michael Cohen keeps saying. Trump will not run because he can't handle the potential humiliation. These guys close to Trump seem to be sure of this, Jonathan. Yeah, I've spoken to Michael Cohen about this directly, and I think that he's making a completely plausible case. I think the question is, we don't yet know whether Trump is likely to lose in 2024. As I've said before, if Republicans do well in 22 and Biden doesn't do well in his third year of his presidency, second and third, and into the election cycle, and in particular, if Biden doesn't even run for re-election, I think that it looks okay for Trump. I think a Trump versus Biden rematch is good for Trump. I think if Biden doesn't run and Kamala Harris is the Democratic nominee, I think that's good for Trump. So I agree with what Michael Cohen says and said to me when I was on his show. I agree. I haven't seen this John Bolton thing, but I'm sure it might be right. I think if Trump knows he will lose, he won't do it because he doesn't want to suffer a humiliation. I just don't know that it's clear Trump will lose yet. And so we're going to be watching that. It's a question we all care about. Here's a longer voicemail, but it's a very, very interesting one. This one is from Mark. And Mark wanted to weigh in on why people on the right call me gay. Mark says, David, you asked why people on the right assume you're gay. I am a gay man who is politically active, and I have some ideas based in personal experience with right-wingers. First, most of us who are actually gay realize you're straight and you're an ally. I'm very glad for all the straight allies we have. I've never picked up on a gay vibe from you. My gaydar does not even register as much as a blip when I watch your YouTube videos. Listen to Mark. However, for a lot of people on the right, particularly the far right, there is just nothing worse than being gay. Hence, gay becomes the perfect epithet. If they don't like your politics, then that means you're gay. If they don't like your position on social issues, then that means you're gay. If they don't like you, period, that must be because you're gay and they're straight. No self-respecting right-winger would tolerate a gay person in their midst, except possibly those who suddenly decided they were, quote, cured. And we all know how long gay cures last. Very interesting email from Mark. So there it is. It's sort of like a presented without comment. Very interesting to hear from Mark on that. Next email is from Jessica. Jessica says, hi, Mr. Pacman. I've watched your show for a while now, and I've heard you say you're a progressive but not a Democrat. Would you say you're independent then? Just wondering, since if someone said they were progressive, I'd think they meant a progressive Democratic. Love your videos. Thanks. So Jessica, with total peace and love, you may have a few terms confused. Progressive is a political ideology, sort of like socialist. If someone says they're a socialist, they might be a member of the Democratic Party or not. They might be a member of the Socialist Party to the extent that sometimes it exists and sometimes does not. But socialist can be an ideology. Maybe that's a bad example since there is a Socialist Party. Listen, progressive can be a member of the Democratic Party or not. I've never been a member of the Democratic Party. I am an independent, but I tend to vote for Democrats when that makes sense in partisan elections. All right. I hope I've cleared it up. Jeez. John says, hey, David, love your channel. What do you think of what do you think the Democrats are going to do in 2024? Joe Biden will be just shy of 82 at the time of the election. I suspect that will be a major issue for many voters. Do you think he will be renominated or step aside and support Kamala Harris? I like Kamala, but I think she's about as charismatic as Al Gore. Have the Democrats painted themselves into a loss in 2024? John from Indiana. Listen, John, it's so early that we don't have definitive answers to these questions. That being said, I have already stated, I have serious concerns. I think 80-plus-year-old Joe Biden, after being hammered on by Republicans, rightly or wrongly, for 4 years against Trump, I don't think it looks good for Joe Biden. If Joe Biden steps aside and the nomination is given to Kamala Harris, or if she wins it in a contest, and then it's Trump versus Kamala, I don't think it's very good. DeSantis versus Kamala, I don't think it's very good for Democrats. So I am very worried about that exact scenario. And painted themselves into a loss is starting to editorialize in a way that I don't know that I'm ready to do yet. But let's just say my policy tends to be, I talk about the next election, which right now is 2022. My concerns are so high for 2024 that I have found myself wandering into talking about it more than I typically would. And John from Indiana brings up exactly some of the concerns that I have. Next, we've got some bonus ones. These are from Facebook. These are tough. Okay, these are tough. Someone wrote to me and said, you need to do more research. Doctors and scientists are speaking out against this vaccine. That was all one sentence. Going on to say, you're just following the lies like a good little sheep. A ton. You know, there's this idea, there's this general understanding that Facebook is particularly a cesspool of anti-vax, non-thinking, sometimes undereducated rants and raves that are barely intelligible. Anecdotally, we're experiencing that. And I would say close to half of the messages we get on our Facebook page result in the person just being banned because they're either hurling insults or otherwise harassing people. Okay, another Facebook special for you today. I'm going to read this as written. Where do you get your information from, bud? We still have our constitutional right of freedom of choice. I don't know what in particular this refers to. My instinct is that it's somehow vaccination related as well. Next one. You were a total and complete piece of S, pushing lies and conflicting truth. Research Nuremberg journalists held accountable, and then F yourself with a heated curling iron. You effing worthless sack of S. You will notice period exclamation point, which is an interesting grammatical curiosity, as well as random capitalization of words like complete, journalists, the F word, yourself, sack is capitalized, reminiscent of Donald Trump. It's actually very interesting how a lot of Trumpian lunatics have picked up on this random capitalization of nouns and other words in the middle of sentences. So there's that. And then lastly, coming perfectly timed on the heels of what some call a booster and some call a third dose. You are so lost. You must have 5G vax sickened because you can't be that stupid. And here we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different places where there's just extra spaces between words. Random capitalization. Sentence fragments, run-on sentence, missing apostrophe and can't. It would actually be, so if I said to you, I have a sentence this long and it has close to double digits of spelling and grammatical errors, you would say, sir, that can't be. But it is. It is hard to believe. We are going to be off next week, Thursday and Friday. We will have a truncated schedule because of the Thanksgiving holiday here in the United States. Of course, many in our audience don't celebrate Thanksgiving. They're not in the United States. We will have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday show, and we will be off Thursday, Friday. Just don't want people to be worried or think the show got pulled off the air. That's next week. We still have a fantastic bonus show for you today. You can sign up at joinpacman.com and get access to the bonus show. It's an extra program every day just for you who say, I am going to support this program financially. You can use the coupon code BETTER21 to get a discount. I look forward to seeing you there. Or we will be back Monday with brand new programming just for you.